From the field to the film room to the war room, we've got you covered every step of the way as the road to the draft starts right now on BGN Radio. Hello and welcome to another episode of the BGN Draft Show. I'm your host, Shane Haff. You can follow me on Twitter and YouTube at Shane Haff NFL. I'm joined today by my co-host and fellow draft enthusiast, Deibs. Give him a follow on Twitter at Mr. Crockpot. Be sure to check out his podcast, Party on Broad. Deibs, how are you doing tonight?
Doing well, man. It's a bitter day. Like, Senior Bowl just goes so fast, man. It's already gone. We're talking about it. We're wrapping a bow on this thing, getting ready for the combine in just a few weeks. But a lot of fun guys to talk about tonight.
Yes, absolutely. We are going to dig into the Senior Bowl, not just for seniors anymore, I might add. The Senior Bowl for anyone who wants to participate. So we're going to talk Senior Bowl winners and losers. Also joined by my co-host on Chalk Talk, Mark Henry Jr. Give him a follow on Twitter at Mark Henry Jr. _ Be sure to check out his Tough Cover radio show every Saturday. Mark, how are you doing?
Good. I feel like the Senior Bowl, I have a little bit of a love-hate relationship with the Senior Bowl because I feel like every year there's 2 or 3 prospects that I love that go to the Senior Bowl and just totally tank their stock. And I'm like, oh, man, they should have just not went. But this year, I don't know if there's that many that I absolutely loved that dropped like a rock or anything. So, I think it was a good Senior Bowl week all around. Had fun watching it from afar. Hopefully, maybe a couple of us will be there to watch it up close next year.
Yeah, this year, my issue with the Senior Bowl is there's a guy I'm very high on that now everybody's very high on that's going to end up going day one. And we'll talk about him here in a minute. I pride myself on finding these guys and saying they're undervalued. And this year, this guy's not going to be undervalued anymore, but we'll get to that in a minute. So what we're going to do today, we're each bringing to the table 2 winners from the Senior Bowl and 1 Senior Bowl loser. Now, we did talk about these in advance to make sure we didn't have the same guys. So you'll hear us talk about 9 different prospects today, 6 guys that improved their stock, 3 guys who not so much. So if you're watching on YouTube, we're going to have some highlights and some clips we show. If you're listening on audio platforms, you don't have to worry about it. You can find stuff all over Twitter about these guys as well. But Deibs, I will throw it to you first. Who was your first winner at the Senior Bowl practices and game?
Yeah, if you wanted to give an award for a guy who made the most money, it's got to be Darius Robinson, an edge rusher out of Missouri. He's a versatile D lineman. He was dominant on the field all week. He's got a really impressive blend of size and length and explosiveness. He was just a consistent pass rusher, winning one-on-ones, as you see on the clips here, using his length to give him lots of options as a rusher. He's a really interesting guy. He's a guy that played primarily on the interior his first 4 seasons for Missouri. Then last year, he moved to edge and had 42 pressures, 27 run stops in 12 games, 8.5 sacks, 14 tackles for loss, made plays all week in, week out. I didn't really know about him. He was definitely under the radar heading into 2023. And man, this guy is rising up the draft boards, getting some first round buzz. So when you talk about strengths, he's got elite length at 6'5". For weaknesses, he's kind of that tweener because he doesn't have a lot of bend. He doesn't have a lot of flexibility. He's got some stiffness in his game. But Darius Robinson just screams Eagles to me. He's a tough, hard-nosed defender, can play multiple positions. His strength is defending the run. He's got a red-hot motor that never stops revving. Just big and long, positional versatility. That's Philly's cup of tea. And, man, Robinson seems to fit that bill. And after an incredible Senior Bowl showing, this guy looks to be really rising up the draft boards. Listen, I know a lot of Eagles fans don't want to hear the words edge defender when it comes to the top of the rounds, especially when you have such high needs at safety and linebacker and corner. But if this guy's sitting there round 2, I know how he loves the trenches. He's definitely going to be in the conversation.
All right. So Darius Robinson, edge rusher. Hopefully that doesn't anger too many Eagles fans out there. Mark, Who is your first guy? Try not to make it someone that'll potentially anger Eagles fans. Who is your first winner from the Senior Bowl?
My first winner comes from my heart. I'll be honest. Cam Hart is a guy that you like the pun there, by the way.
I do. That's top notch. 10 out of 10.
I'm a diehard Notre Dame fan, and Cam Hart's been a guy that I've loved watching for his entire tenure at Notre Dame, and I'm happy that the Senior Bowl has really given him an opportunity to kind of show out in front of a lot of. I felt like there was a lot of really good receivers at the Senior Bowl this year, or at least a lot of different types of receivers. And you go search the Cam Hart tape, it seems like he did a good job covering a wide variety of them, whether it be in practice, we just showed the clip, or in the game. And in the game, he also was stepping up in the run game and making big time tackles, making big time hits. He is a guy who steps up and finds the ball, whether that be making a play on the ball or whether that be tackling a ball carrier. And I felt like that showed throughout the week in the Senior Bowl. He's also a guy, he was projected like maybe late day 3 on some sites like PFF. I mean, we all use the mock draft simulator on PFF. He was like 163 or something like that on PFF. And people are now, if you search it up, people are saying maybe a third rounder, maybe that could even peek into the second. I mean, he's 6'3", or a shade under 6'3", 6'2" and like 3/4. He's got great size, great length, a great react and read and react ability, quick transitions on routes. And people have said he was one of the most consistent defensive backs from the week. He was a 2023 Feldman freak. And he's also like just uber competitive. He's been a part of really good defenses, top 20 defenses the last couple of years. And a little tidbit from the Feldman Freaks column. He broad jumped 11-2. I don't know if that's, I'm not a broad jump expert, but people are telling me that it's pretty good.
You don't regularly broad jump, Mark?
No, I'm not all up on the broad jumping portion of the Olympics. He did hit 38 inches on the vertical and hit 23 miles per hour on the GPS. And in addition, Eagles fans, we all love to talk about a certain guy who likes to squat a lot of weight. 505 pounds that Cam Hart squatted. That's a corner. Like him having that strength at corner, a lot of the time, I think we talked about it last week, strength will come up with receivers. And I'm like, does that really matter? I think it does matter at corner because they're not going to be afraid to step up and tackle. They're not going to be afraid to step up and find the ball. And I think Cam Hart did that all week. And that clip against Tez Walker, he ended up getting a pick there in practice, had a lot of just really impressive showings, at least from what I saw.
All right. So my first guy I'm going to talk about, I think Deibs used the verbiage that his guy made the most money at the Senior Bowl. I would maybe push back and say that this guy probably made the most money at the Senior Bowl. He's the guy that everybody's been talking about, and I appreciate you guys leaving me the layup on this one because, I didn't have quite as much time to watch the Senior Bowl stuff. I was traveling this weekend, but it's cornerback Quin Yan Mitchell out of Toledo. He's 6 foot, 195 pounds. The book on him coming in, I mean, he was a really good player at Toledo. You don't know what Toledo's mascot is, probably. I mean, they're not a big,
Mud hen. Don't try me, Shane.
Mud hen. You're a degenerate. Is that really their mascot?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, there you go. Now you know what Toledo's mascot is. They're a group of 5 team. I mean, you're not getting a lot of like first round guys coming out of those situations. But at Toledo, he was a really good zone cornerback. Showed great route recognition, playing, off zone coverage, has good acceleration. He's kind of got slow transitions at times. That was a big concern of his. But when you watch the Senior Bowl practices and things, he was probably the best player on the field. He played himself into the conversation, not only for round 1, but for potentially CB1. I know Daniel Jeremiah's got him as number 19 on his big board right now. And I don't know if I'm not going to go there yet. I haven't dug into all the corner tape yet. We haven't done our corner rankings yet, so I can't give a definitive opinion on that. But I know that people are talking about him in the CB1 conversation now. There were a lot of concerns about his ability to play man coverage and to press after playing in Toledo's zone-heavy scheme. In one-on-ones at the Senior Bowl, you're playing man coverage. There is no whole defense on the field playing zone, and he acquitted himself really well. So Quin Yan Mitchell is probably one of the biggest stock-up guys coming out of the combine, along with, Darius Robinson and another guy I'm going to talk about later are probably the top three in my view. But Mitchell, you're going to hear his name a lot, and I don't know that you were hearing his name this much before the combine. He's a guy that, before the Senior Bowl. He's one of those guys that rocketed up big boards into the public discourse this weekend.
Yeah, I'll push back just a little bit on Quin Yan, just because not anything Shane said. My point is, like, the CB1 talk with him, I think, is going too far. I know that he did show out well in the Senior Bowl, and like I just said, a lot of really good receivers at the Senior Bowl this year. So I don't think that's nothing at all. He's a first-round pick. I think he'll be in my top probably 30, maybe top 25. But I think people putting him over guys like Terrion Arnold and Kool-Aid McKinstry and even Nate Wiggins and Cooper DeJean to a little bit less of a degree, I think that's a little bit too far.
I agree.
I don't think I'm not even talking to either of you. I'm more so to come at some of the Twitter discourse out there, because you guys are right. He's rocketed up boards. I think he's going to have a Devin Witherspoon-like rise, and that ended up being smart. Like, Devin Witherspoon ended up being incredible last year, and I'm sure he's going to be one of the best corners in the NFL going forward. But I just think we got to see, especially Arnold and McKinstry, tested at such a high level in the SEC against the best receivers in college, and hold up over a longer sample size than a week of practice. So just one thing I wanted to throw out there.
Yeah, I agree. All
right. I do have to fact check you here live on air, Mark. The Toledo Mud Hens are a 3A baseball team, AAA affiliate of the Detroit Tigers. Toledo is the Rockets.
You're right.
And when you said, as I was saying, nobody knows what their mascot is, and you said that, I was like, I kind of thought it was a rocket, but I was willing to go with Mark and no more.
Wow. Why did I know about the Toledo Mud Hens minor league baseball team? Like, why is that in my brain? That's bad. I will never be more ashamed of anything I say on any podcast we're ever on than getting that wrong.
All right. Well, there you go. I don't know. I might be able to dig up a few things you said over the years, but we move on. I digress and we move on. Deibs, tell me who your second winner was from the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, it's Roman Wilson, wide receiver out of Michigan. This guy was just one of the most impressive players, especially throughout the week of practices. Here's one of his biggest highlights of the week, coming on a one-on-one against Quin Yan Mitchell. The only guy that really could keep up with him was Quin Yan Mitchell, and he made him look silly. So Roman Wilson, man, showed really good route running, really flashed his ability to create separation. His short area quickness looked really solid. This is also one of the best deep threats in the draft. He finished 2023 with 12 deep catches. That was 12th best in the nation per Pro Football Focus. So this guy tracking the football, he's up there with the best of the best. He's got the ball skills of a 6'5" wide receiver. When it comes to weaknesses, he doesn't have a lot of versatility, and he's not a big yak guy, but he's got a smaller frame, so he might be limited more so in the slot at the NFL level, which might not be a bad thing. I expect this guy to test really well at the combine. So I think this is just the beginning for Roman Wilson and his draft stock. It's also worth noting that, Michigan didn't really give him a lot of opportunities, but when they came to him, he thrived. He took advantage of them and capitalized every single time. I think this guy at best is a wide receiver 3 early in his NFL career due to his lack of physicality. But that means he's an obvious attraction for the Philadelphia Eagles, who are looking for exactly that, a wide receiver 3 in a Kellen Moore system that's going to spread the ball a lot more across the offense. The quality and depth of the wide receiver position this year is arguably the best of all time. The fact that this guy stood out that much says just so much. So Roman Wilson was a huge winner this week.
All right, there you have it. Our first offensive player listed as a winner. Roman Wilson out of Michigan. Mark, are you going to keep the train rolling here with offensive winners, or are you sticking on the defensive side of the ball?
Nah, I'm sticking with a specific position on the defensive side of the ball for all of my winners and losers. But I just wanted to add in Deibs. I absolutely totally agree on everything he said there on Roman Wilson. And I think there's a chance. I think Shane is inferring that a certain center from Oregon was number 3 on that major self money at the combine list. I think it's Roman Wilson. I think there's a chance this guy ends up sneaking into like the top of the second round with some of the ways that people are talking about him. And he was a guy you could draft on day 3 on some, mock draft simulators, or at least in round 3. Roman Wilson's a guy that I think there's a chance in 2 years where, like, man, Michigan, held him back. Like we really didn't get to see what he really could be. And I think he probably made JJ McCarthy look a lot better than he was at times. So Roman Wilson's a guy that I like more every time I see him. But who I'm going with someone who probably had to cover Roman Wilson this year. I'm going with Max Melton, a Rutgers cornerback. And by the way, Rutgers, for being like such a nondescript school, put a lot of DBs in the NFL. Obviously, the McCourty twins. There's been a couple others as of late. Feels like the Patriots always draft them. But just a weird little tidbit. Rutgers, DBU, maybe. But Max Melton is a guy that I got to be honest, it's not a guy that I had really close attention on throughout the season or even going into the offseason. Wasn't a name that I had really talked about a lot. But I've been watching some tape on some corners because this newsflash, this just in, the Eagles need corners. So Max Melton is a guy that even before the Senior Bowl, I started to really like, and his competitiveness jumps off the screen. He's a dog, for lack of a better word, as our embattled head coach would say. But he was all over the practice fields all week. He was one of the top foot speeds as recorded by the way, their Zebra Technologies is who records their miles per hour at the Senior Bowl. Thought that was funny. But Zebra Technologies, he was like a top 3 fastest guy at the Senior Bowl, hit 21 miles per hour. One of the biggest plays from the national practice was he ripped a fumble out from USC's Marshawn Lloyd near the sideline and then recovered it in bounds. He's not the fastest guy and he's not the tallest guy, but he makes up for that by being really physical, by being really aggressive. And also he's got 32-inch arms. So even though he is short, he makes up for it with his length and his arms. And this is the probably where he made himself the most money. He was incredible in the red zone. These red zone drills are slanted towards the offense. And he was shutting people down pretty routinely in the red zone. It was a lot of scouts said that it kind of really opened their eyes. And another thing that's interesting with Max Melton is the fact that he's 5'11", but he only really played outside. So in Senior Bowl practice, they were playing him inside at the slot, and he played like 20, 30 snaps a year in the slot in college. So this is kind of a brand new thing. And people were saying he looked like a 5-year vet who had played in the slot his whole NFL career, and he had done the best in the slot of anybody that day. I think it was day 2. But so we're talking about a guy who showed that he could be a very good outside corner in college, even at 5'11". But we might be talking about a guy who's best used as a slot corner, so we haven't even potentially seen his best usage, on a consistent basis.
You might be surprised. I posted a mock draft last week where I had the Eagles take a corner in the first round. I had a lot of people telling me the Eagles didn't need a first-round cornerback this year, and that really surprised me. So you might be surprised what Eagles fans think about that. But I do have to ask you, Mark, do you know what Rutgers' mascot is? I'm giving you redemption here.
It's a shame. Scarlet Knights.
Okay, I know it was a softball. I was just trying to give you a little bit of redemption here.
It's upsetting. I don't even know how. I won't be able to bounce back from it. I forgot about it a little bit. Now you brought it up. I had another point I wanted to say. You derailed me.
I had to ask here because Rutgers at least has the illusion of being obscure. If I ask you who Oregon's mascot is here in a second, that one's just openly mocking you. So I was trying to do you a favor, man.
But you're right, by the way. You're totally right on the Eagles fans' delusions about the cornerback position. Because something that I've said on here, I think Eagles fans have become, it's almost like we focus on like one thing every year that they need to fix. And it was receiver in 2019. And they had to draft Devontae Smith. We were so terrible at receiver. And I think that was right. But we're so focused on linebacker. Eagles fans are like, oh, linebacker, the way we treat linebackers is ridiculous. And no one's realized that we haven't drafted a corner in the first 2 rounds since 2017. You can even make that a safety as well, a defensive back since 2017. I think I'm going to bring that stat up every show just because it makes me mad. And the Eagles desperately need an infusion of young talent at the cornerback position and safety position, at the defensive back, in the secondary. There's no way around it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right. I've alluded to him. I'm going to talk about him now. My guy, interior offensive lineman Jackson Powers Johnson out of Oregon. He was 6'3" and 2/8 of an inch at Senior Bowl measurements, which, by the way, if you try to go look up like Senior Bowl measurements, they look really weird. Like his measurement will say 6'032". All that means just Senior Bowl Combine 101. The first number is feet. The second and third number are inches, and the fourth number is how many eighths of an inch. So 6'032" translates to 6'3" and 2/8 of an inch, just so you know. He weighed in at 334 pounds. He had a phenomenal week at the Senior Bowl. I mean, it was incredible watching him. He dominated in one-on-ones, which typically favor the defense. And he did so not only at center, where he played all season. Every single snap he played this year was at center, but he also did it at guard. Now, he did play right guard for Oregon in 2022. So he's basically a 2-year starter who's played 2 different positions. And he excelled at the Senior Bowl, no matter where you put him. Center, right guard, left guard, it didn't matter. He sustained an injury on the second day of practice. And I use air quotes because another thing you need to know about the Senior Bowl is these guys will come in and do really good in a day or two of practice. And then you just basically find an excuse to be done. You've done what you came to do. You don't need to risk getting hurt. You don't need to put bad reps on tape. So you come out, you shine, and you get out. And that's basically, I mean, maybe he tweaked a hamstring. I don't know. But more than likely, anybody that you see injured at Senior Bowl practices, this is what they're doing. It isn't often that you get first round hype for a center. And it kills me as a guy who loves interior offensive line that doesn't happen. Like Creed Humphrey should have been a first round pick. And I was banging that drum in his draft. And Jackson Powers Johnson is going to get that hype. He's getting it right now. And the versatility to play offensive guard as well. It opens up the teams that can be interested. I mean, pragmatically, if you think about a team like the Eagles, well, maybe that's not a good example because they've already got Cam. Well, no, it is. If Jason Kelce retires, you've got Jackson Powers Johnson sitting here, and you've seen Cam Jurgens play right guard and it not go very well. You need to shift him into center. But now the fact that Jackson Powers Johnson played right guard at the Senior Bowl so well enables a team like the Eagles to draft him and feel like you can plug him in and it's not as much as a projection. And that's just one example, but there's a lot of teams that are going to be interested in this guy and not all of them need a center. And so he dramatically opened up his options to be a first round pick by showing out so well at offensive guard. So he was a big time riser. He's going to be in the first round of a lot of mock drafts over the coming month. And it's very well deserved in my opinion. So, okay. Now, unfortunately, for every Senior Bowl winner, there is a Senior Bowl loser. It's not a 1-to-1, but there's Senior Bowl losers. And we got to talk about a few of those guys who saw their stock fall over the course of Senior Bowl practices. So, Deibs, I'll throw it to you first here. Give me your Senior Bowl loser.
This one hits hard. I was a big fan of his. It's Tez Walker, wide receiver out of North Carolina. He fought through some NCAA BS. He was dealing with some eligibility things, and because He was helping his grandmother, who was very sick, and he finally got on the field this season. He was, without question, Drake May's number one target, and they hit the ground running this year. When he came in for North Carolina, they looked great. 3 months ago, Tez Walker looked like a potential first-round draft pick. He had games of 130 or more receiving yards against Miami, against Virginia, against Duke. Everything has gone downhill for Tez Walker since then. You look at the Tar Heels, who lost their last 2 regular season games. Walker opted out for the Mayo Bowl. His Senior Bowl practices were just plagued with drops. You watched him in the game. He left a lot of yards out on the field. He didn't have a single catch, despite guys were throwing him the ball. He just couldn't bring it home. And in a draft full of amazing options at wide receiver this year, I think this guy easily probably might have done the least to prove himself. And although he had first-round buzz during the regular season, this guy looks more and more like a middle-round option at this point in time. There's a good chance he dominates at the combine with a really good 40 time, but it's not looking good, unfortunately. So Tez Walker is my choice.
All right. So Tez Walker, a guy that I've taken in a lot of mock drafts, didn't have the best weekend. There's still time to bounce back, but it is a bump in the road. Mark, we sticking with cornerbacks here?
That's the theme. We're going with the same theme for all 3, all corners. And I'm going to, our neck of the woods. Not really. It's like 5 hours away from Philly, but Penn State.
Our necks of the woods are radically different.
Yeah.
My neck of the woods is Tyler Guyton.
I also said that currently located in Texas. It's like I'm currently in Texas. Said that, but yeah, back in Pennsylvania, there is a college called Penn State, and Kalen King played corner there, and he lost at the Senior Bowl. He just allowed far too much separation between him and receivers. He looked terrible. He lacked physicality at every single level. He looked really small, even smaller than he does on tape in college. I just thought he looked like he was getting kind of manhandled a little bit at times and just moved off of where he wanted to be. And then if he ever got beat, he would just grab them. And he was extremely grabby in practice. Just a really disastrous season and week for Kalen King. This Senior Bowl caps off a disastrous senior season for Kalen King, because this is a guy who people were talking about as a potential first-round pick if he came out last year, I believe. And then he went back into the 60.3 overall PFF grade. Terrible coverage grades, missed tackles, allowed an 82.4 passer rating. He had a bad year at Penn State, and whenever Penn State had a problem stopping the pass, it was because of Kalen King. So I think Kalen King kind of just showed what he showed all year at the Senior Bowl. I think there were some people out there hoping that maybe it was just a down year. Maybe it was just, something weird. Maybe he had an injury. He looked the same to me as he looked all year.
It seems like every year there's a cornerback that's like they were going to be around one guy and they come back and they're stock tanks. Who was the guy? There was a guy a year or two ago that was in conversation to be a top 10 pick and then just totally tanked his stock. And now the name is slipping my mind.
I mean, Keely Ringo and Eli Ricks were right there. They were top guys before last 2 years ago.
Yeah. I think it was the year before that. I don't know. Never. I'll think of it later when we're not recording and viewers will just never know the answer. So that'll be great. It's great podcasting. Here's a clip that Mark, you wanted to show. So here's a clip of King. If it'll play.
I meant to. It's funny. Everyone had great reps against Kalen King. If you search every receiver's name that was at the Senior Bowl, you'll find a clip within the first 2 or 3 clips that's going against Kalen King. And apparently at the end of the one day, receivers were able to pick the corner they were able to go against. And everyone was just picking Kalen King, including Deib's loser, Tez Walker. Tez Walker was going to be my loser. A little background. Deib stole Roman Wilson and Tez Walker from me. But Tez Walker didn't look like a loser for precisely like a couple plays at the Senior Bowl, and it was when it was against Kalen King. So I would argue Kalen King's an even bigger loser, even though I was going to pick Tez Walker initially.
That's funny.
All right, I will go to the quarterback position where you could argue everyone was a loser. It wasn't a great day. It wasn't great for not Spencer Rattler. Not Spencer
Rattler looked good.
Yeah, Spencer Rattler looked good, but the guys that you've heard us talk about, Michael Penix, Bo Nix, not good weekends necessarily for them, but I'll talk about Bo Nix. I said on our QB ranking show that he had an adequate NFL arm, and you hope that when you show up at an live event, and you've got him throwing next to other quarterbacks, it just jumps out a little more, and it absolutely didn't. He just didn't look the part. He missed a lot of throws. Nothing special arm talent wise. He never looked comfortable in practice. He did bounce back on Thursday in red zone drills, but it was a big letdown for him overall. And I don't think that Michael Penix Jr. had a good Senior Bowl particularly either in terms of accuracy and some things. But there's no doubt, like, you can tell a difference between those two guys when they're standing next to each other throwing the football. And not just because one of them's left-handed, but in terms of velocity and things like that. Just a big difference. And so if you're going to take someone, Bo Nix has the argument for being more dynamic and athletic than Michael Penix. But, at the end of the day, do you want the athletic guy or do you want the guy that's got arm talent if they both got warts? And teams will ask that question. That question's going to continue to be asked about QB4 in this draft. But I thought Bo Nix had an opportunity to show up and really wow some people, and he definitely didn't do that.
Yeah. It's when his like bread and butter is that short intermediate routes and he's missing guys, it's not good. It's not good.
Right, Absolutely.
I want to have a passionate opinion about QB4, and I can't.
It's Michael.
You think it's Penix? Yeah, I probably would say it's Nix for me, but I don't. I'm not passionate about it at all. And JJ's right there too. Those three QBs, I think, they'll all have the same draft grade from me. Like, they'll all be within a couple spots to me.
I thought you were about to say they'll all have the same draft grade for me, and that grade is no.
That would have been funnier.
One quarterback that I thought really impressed, a guy that probably went from undrafted to day 3 guy, is Carter Bradley. I believe out of South Alabama, playing in his hometown. Has a cannon of an arm. Should I share the video? Hold on.
Sure. Yeah. We can throw it up here.
Has a really nice arm and was hitting guys left and right. I didn't really know anything about this guy until the Senior Bowl week. So keep an eye out for Carter Bradley, who might turn some heads at the upcoming combine. He doesn't give you a lot. He's not a dual threat guy at all. He's not going to make defenders miss. He's a pure pocket passer. But man, the arm talent is there, man. He can drive balls, into seams. He's not a creator, but if you're looking for a guy that can get the ball out fast, accurately, and go through progressions, this guy's pretty legit, man. Look at that. It's good. Got some arm, man. So Carter Bradley, there you go.
There you go.
You know who went from potentially being drafted on day 3 to, if you draft him, you should get ridiculed.
Yes.
Sam Hartman.
Sam Hartman, baby.
That guy's not an NFL quarterback. Go sell insurance, Sam. Like, I don't know what to say.
You just know the Eagles are going to bring him on to the roster like Clayton Thorson and make us watch a full preseason of Sam Hartman and Midnight Green. It's going to be dreadful.
You learn the UFL, buddy. Like that's what I would say to Sam Hartman.
I remember writing a scathing article about the drafting of Clayton Thorson. I said something along the lines of the site that I wrote those for doesn't exist anymore, but I said something about like when you get the opportunity, or that when you play at a lesser school, you have to dominate lesser competition. And so when you get the opportunity to draft a guy that was really bad at a bad school, you should definitely jump at the chance.
That's like that guy who played this year. Who was that guy who played in the NFL this year? And then you looked at their college stats and it was like he was terrible. And it was at like a terrible school. Oh my God, this is the same thing as like Shane not being able to remember the corner who fell. This is gonna bother me. Oh my God, I can't remember. Backup quarterbacks who played this season. This is a useless thing. This is bad podcasting.
I mean, I'm still shocked that Sean Clifford is in the NFL. That blows my mind. That guy was terrible.
Yeah. Well, we talked about Senior Bowl winners and losers. We talked about AAA baseball teams. We talked about obscure quarterbacks. I really think that's going to pretty much do it for our Senior Bowl winners and losers shows. Does anybody have any final thoughts they want to throw out there before I get us out of here?
I can throw some names out there.
Go for it.
Yeah, Peyton Wilson, linebacker, out of NC State, top 5 linebacker in this class, had a really good day, especially in coverage. And we know how the Eagles love those guys. Keep an eye on Peyton Wilson, 6'4", really good, interesting prospect. Jarvis Brownlee, day 3 corner out of Louisville, had a really nice week, and he had an interception during the game. And then I'll throw out Theo Johnson, a tight end out of Penn State. Massive dude, showed nice route running. He was a smooth runner, creating some separation off the line there, which was nice. And then Gabe Hall, a defensive tackle out of Baylor, had a really nice week. 6'6" defensive tackle, just massive. And then Braden Fisk out of Florida State, another defensive tackle, was another winner of the week.
By the way, the quarterback who I was talking about was Tim Boyle. Tim Boyle. He had like the worst college stats of all time, and then had like a 5-year backup, and then he started this year for the Jets, and he was atrocious. Yeah.
I was going to say, if it was against the Eagles, he probably would have looked like Tom Brady.
Well, we made Zach Wilson look fine. Speaking of a guy named Wilson, Peyton Wilson, who Dibes mentioned, was almost one of my guys here. 6'4" at the linebacker position is just insane. Like, he looks like a safety when he's out there covering too. Like, he looks like Kyle Hamilton a little bit. Like when he's covering people in deep spots, it's insane. And then he's a linebacker and steps up and hits you in the face. The problem with Peyton Wilson is, like I've said, I think he just has such a long list of injuries that it's hard to even. We're not doctors here on the BGN draft show, so I can't clear Peyton Wilson.
If you're a Sixers fan, we all pretty much have our medical doctor.
So true. It's so true. It's disgusting how sad that is. One last guy to get past that, Kyrie Jackson from Oregon. Nice. That's a guy I really, really like going into Senior Bowl, and I saw he wasn't like not a ton of people are talking about him, but I saw some nice reps. People were talking about him a little bit.
All right. So there you guys have it. If you want to know more about any of these guys, Dibes has got some videos out on Twitter and YouTube covering Senior Bowl guys. Also, just like punch these guys' names into Twitter search media on Twitter. Type in Quin Yan Mitchell and you'll get you'll know the Senior Bowl stuff because it's the real grainy footage that's hard to see, but you can go watch these guys for yourself. That's about going to do it for this episode of the BGN Draft Show. In 2 weeks, we will be back to our position rankings. Next week, we're going to do some live mock drafting, and then we will get back to our positional rankings. But if you guys enjoyed this show, be sure you hit that subscribe button so you get all the shows on the BGN radio feed. Later this week, Johnny and I will have out part 1 of a 2, or who knows, it might end up being a 3-part podcast breaking down Kellen Moore's offense and what it means for the Eagles. So you can get that. All the other shows, check us out on Twitter. I'm at Shane Haff NFL. Dibes is at Mr. Crockpot, and Mark is at Mark Henry Jr. We will catch you guys next week for another episode of the BGN Draft Show. Go Birds.